All right. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, and especially thank you for being interested in our today's topic, which will all about being how Amazon manages capacity in uncertain times. Uncertain times such as peak times, such as uncertainties and environmental things, and so on. But I will elaborate on that later on. My name is Tim Ludwicki. I'm responsible for the business development section in Amazon Freight, especially focusing on the enterprise part, and I'm sitting in Berlin for Amazon Freight, and I'm taking care of two of the major market regions that we're covering, which is namely the CEU and the UK. So maybe like one or the other is thinking about like what does Amazon actually have to do with logistics, and who's actually Amazon Freight? And this is a perfectly valid question. So maybe I can try to differentiate us a little bit from the rest of the company. So can I ask you to raise your hand if you ever saw one of our Amazon Prime trailers on the highway? We internally refer to them as blue trailers. All right. Thank you very much. So I think this is the vast majority of the room that ever passes one of the blue trailers on the highway. And this is pretty much the answer to what we are doing. So this is what Amazon Freight is all about. So we are not the ones dealing with the aircrafts. We are not the ones dealing with the parcels, but we are pretty much dealing with everything in between. And how we are doing that, and especially how we are doing that in uncertain times, is what I'm trying to bring to you in the next slides. And everything that you'll hear today is basically about creating a high possible resiliency in your logistics network. And I'm going to present to you how we are doing it. So when talking about key challenges in logistics, especially in uncertainty and peak times, we are pretty much distinguishing between three main challenges. The very first one, and the very critical one for all of us, is securing capacity. So in Amazon, we always need to make sure that we deliver our parcels to our customers. And we need to do the trucks to do so. And independently of any disruptions that we are seeing in the market, this is one of the challenges that we are facing day in and day out. So no matter if we are, for example, affected by strikes, as we saw them last year in the UK, for example, or by natural hazards, such as we just saw them in Poland or in Czech Republic, where we saw floods, we have to make sure that we got the capacity on hand to deliver our Prime packages on time. And especially, we have to have the capacity on hand when we are entering peak times, such as we are doing right now. Today is the second day of Prime Day, for example. Black Friday is just around the corner. We're seeing Cyber Monday, Cyber Week in November, and also Christmas just around the corner. So this is really the busy period of the year for us. And jumping right into the second one, we have to make sure that we deliver for a high service reliability. So once we have all the issues of the capacity challenge solved, so we have the capacity in our business, and we dealt with the seasonality of products or entire industries. We have the trucks on hand, we have all our assets sorted. We have to make sure that we deliver on our promises, which is Prime promises, for example. So every customer should have their parcels on hand when we promised it. And this is not just like a week later or a day later, or customers are even sensitive when packages are an hour late. So we are really trying to deliver on the promises in every time of the year. And the third challenge, and probably one of the major challenges that all the market players are facing, is operating sustainably. So in order to not make all these events that I just named that are down the road sales success, and not in order to just increase our sales year over year, we also want to make our business more sustainable year over year and have the sales success on the one hand, but also an environmental success on the other hand that helps us to further decrease our carbon footprint in the industry and to achieve the goals that we set ourselves with the climate pledge of being net carbon neutral by 2040, so 10 years before the Paris Agreement would actually do so. So this is the 3 key challenges, and in the next slides we will go through it and jump into it, and we will actually see how Amazon is solving this. So just looking at the topic of how we are doing, or how we are managing our capacity, we have to add a little more complexity to what we are doing, because our network grew quite significantly over the years, and especially in Amazon Freight, we are operating since 2019 in the European Union. We are facing some challenges, especially when entering into the peak days or into the busy period of the year. So what we are seeing is challenges by market volatility, and we see transportation constraints in capacity. And so to give you an idea what the volatility sets us to what challenges, when we're talking about capacity and when we're talking about the market demand, especially in Amazon, we are seeing ourselves set to about 1x4 to 3x the demand in peak times that we see in off-peak times. This means when we're operating a lane, from time to time we see an increase on lanes by 40 or 50%, but sometimes we even see increases in lanes by 300 or 200, 250% compared to the normal volume that we are shipping on these lanes. And therefore, we need to pay very close attention to what we are planning and how we scale up and scale down and build our reactive processes in order to cope with these challenges. And we are not doing this in a handful of lanes, for example, transporting from A to B or from B to A, but giving you an idea about the Amazon network, we are actually operating a network in Central Europe and UK, which consists of 135 fulfillment centers, so the big storage centers that you probably saw on the highway as well, same as the blue trailers. We have currently 37 sort centers and more than 275 delivery stations from where the parcels will be distributed into the cities. And this is the network that you're operating, and this is what sets us up to challenges. So the network that I just described has an output of about 3.3 billion packages every year. So 3.3 billion packages being delivered in Central Europe and the UK. And this is what adds complexity to our network. And this is what also adds complexity probably to any other industry that's currently in peak times. And the reason why we do this, and the reason why we do it ourselves nowadays, is an anecdote from the Amazon history. So if I can take you back to 2015, we saw a pretty significant event in the Amazon history, which we refer to as the Great Christmas Fiasco. So 2015, we had our entire logistics given to partners, and these partners actually failed badly when it came to coping with the volatility that we saw in our network. So in the end, many customers, many prime customers were waiting for their parcels just before Christmas, and they actually never arrived. So the parcels arrived just after Christmas when, nobody was actually needing them. And people were disappointed, a lot of complaints. And Amazon we set ourselves to the challenge of being the most customer-centric company in the world. And this was, of course, an absolute no-go. And that's when our former CEO decided to take matters into our own hands. And this is when we started to actually build our own network. And this is what you see here. So this is the transportation network at which we are looking only in the European Union. This is the capacity that we have, and this is the lanes that we operate, and this is how we operate the lanes, basically. So after we saw the Great Christmas Fiasco in 2015, we basically changed the way our business worked and our operations worked significantly. We did this by reducing the number of external carriers and external logistics companies of working for us and investing heavily into our own assets. We did this by leasing planes, which 2017 launched Amazon Air. And we did this by investing in our own assets and our own facilities in order to take things into our own hands. So to give you an idea where we are in America, for example, today in America, the middle mile is almost 100% managed by Amazon. So it's just everything is done by Amazon internally. And we also own one of the most one of the biggest electrified fleets in the world. So, for example, in the last mile, you might heard of partnering with Amazon and the American BEV company, and we bought 100,000 delivery vans to decarbonize the last mile in city centers. And just in July, I think about 300 of these vans also arrived in Europe and in Germany to actually decarbonize the supply chain in city centers in the last mile. But focusing on the middle mile, focusing on what Amazon Freight is doing, we are currently doing, in off-peak times, about 60 to 70,000 full truckloads every week with our network. And ramping up for peak season, we're actually doing 110,000 truckloads every week in order to cope with the demand that we have. How are we doing this? This slide says 10,000 own trailers, 10,000 blue trailers that most of you saw on the highway already, and I'm sure after this everyone will see one. Nowadays it's even 11,000 trailers, so we're increasing the number of assets still. On top of that, we have about 20,000 contracted carriers in Europe that are also helping us to cover demand peaks in our supply. And we do this on about 7,000 lanes. And very importantly, last point, but not least, is our intermodal business. So transporting on rail, transporting on short sea connections in Europe is definitely key to our sustainability structure, and this is why we are also ramping up this year over year. So, giving you another example from the Amazon history and another Amazon anecdote in order to understand how we are basically benchmarking ourselves against best standards and how we are targeting ourselves against best standards. So, what do you think during peak time was the fastest delivery ever achieved by Amazon? So this means the point in time when someone hit the order button on the Amazon website until the delivery driver shows up at the doorstep and hands the parcel to the customer. What do you think was it during peak? Is it maybe 2 days? Is it a day? Any ideas? I'm hearing 2 hours, 5 hours, okay. Yeah, I'm hearing 6, 7, okay, but it actually was, so when everything works perfectly in our network, it was 29 minutes and 54 seconds from the ordering button until the person delivered the package to the door of the end customer. All right, and now that we know how we manage our capacity in Amazon, we also invested heavily in tech. So these heavy tech investments will ensure our service reliability. That's what we are all about in terms of service reliability. And we categorize this into 4 major key topics that we are dealing with on a daily basis. So the very first one is communication. So in order to communicate properly with our carriers and with our drivers, we developed our own digital platform to do so. So this platform can be accessed by our carriers, can be accessed by our drivers easily, and they can, for example, take loads from the platform, they can cancel loads, they can, for example, upload driver schedules so we see where capacity is free. They can basically check the driver schedules where they are at the moment. They can find the financials. They can even pay invoices or send invoices over this platform. So we are trying to ease out all the challenges in communication with our carriers and drivers. And we also measure performance with these apps. So it's also possible that carriers get eliminated from our network when not complying with the standards of performance that we are setting. The second one that we have is tracking. So tracking is a crucial part in terms of staying up to date. Everyone likes to be up to date, and everyone likes to be up to date proactively even more. And this is why we are using the tracking function in the app. Basically not only in the app, but we are leveraging different databases in order to keep a tracking of more than 90% of our deliveries. So this, for example, works via the app that we're using. So every 15 minutes it will send a ping where the driver currently is. This works with telemetry in the trailers, and this also works with third-party databases that we buy in order to get locations of the customers. And this is how we differentiate between more or less important information that the driver sends. And for example, we are taking the ping frequency of the drivers or of the trucks to get prioritization in our supply chain. And getting to the third one, probably one of the most critical ones is the disruption management. So in the year 2023, so last year, we saw more than 7.2 million disruptions in our network. So 7.2 million disruption tickets over the year. This means on a 365-day basis, we have more than 7,000 disruptions every day. And we are categorizing them into two major ways. So the one category we have is proactive disruptions, or preventive disruptions, if you want to call them like that. These represent about 22% of the disruptions that we are getting. So these are disruptions that did not actually happen, but will happen in the future to a very high, with a very high possibility. So we are using the data that we are creating with our carriers and drivers, and also with our shippers, to predict events and solve them proactively in order to avoid any harm to our network. So, for example, trucks are scheduled to be late. We will automatically shift slots in our warehouses to get them into a later slot, so we are not causing any disruptions in our yard or in our dock. The second big group that we are talking about is reactive disruptions. So 78%, that adds up to 100, yes. 78% of the disruptions that we have seen are reactive disruptions. 71% of these are in writing, and about 9% are in calls. So this is disruptions that we are facing that already happened. And in order to cope with the things that already happened, we probably identify trucks that run late, that took a detour, for example, or we have, I don't know, no telemetrics at the moment, and then we are already in contact with the end customer, we are in contact with the FCs in order to reschedule what already happened before. And the very last one is minimizing rejections. So when we have, for example, external customers booking loads in Amazon, or when we have Amazon freight transportation, so warehouse transportations in Amazon, we are trying to minimize rejections. And we do that with our relay load board. So we are posting loads on the relay load board to a large community of carriers, and they can pick up these loads. This normally goes to a higher cost for us, but we will actually deliver on our promise of delivering in time and having capacity even in peak times. And finally, all these four absolutely contribute to the service reliability that we must keep even in these challenging times. So, drilling further into the topic, what we are doing and where we invested in our tech, we heavily invested into our demand forecasting, and we did this through AI, obviously. And how we are doing this, we're basically structuring this into 3 decades. So we had the traditional and statistical modules in order to forecast demands, and since more than 15 years now, we are using machine learning to actually forecast our demands. And this will help us to better understand new product launches in the market. How will we tax sales? This will help us to identify slow-moving goods. So on this one, we've seen a pickle lip balm. So we probably have some on hand still. So this is the category slow-moving products. And we also have products with a high seasonality. So entering into winter sports season, for example, entering into Christmas, or in this case, Halloween. This is where we are trying to make our forecast more accurate year over year by using AI capabilities and by using machine learning. We actually have more than 20 machine learning modules at the moment, live and running, that predict the demands, even for this very challenging product categories. And over the last years, so namely since 2015, we were able, with these machine learning modules, to improve our forecasting accuracy by more than 15 times. So giving us the chance to plan capacity better and also delivering on our promise and basically like getting everything in time. And the very last one, actually it's the second to last, is the big topic of sustainability. In one of the previous slides, I actually referred to the Paris Climate Pledge and to the Climate Pledge and to the Paris Agreement. And Amazon is one of the founders of the Climate Pledge, actually. So we want to be net carbon zero by 2040. So beating the Paris Agreement by more than 10 years. And these are just a couple of examples where we heavily invest money in order to get more sustainability into our network. So the one that we saw is network and operational efficiency. Of course, by getting more loads in, and we as Amazon Freight, we are not only about shipping goods into Amazon, but we would also take any other load in Central Europe or UK and ship it from A to B for every shipper, basically. And this helps us to operational efficiency. So we are getting more traction in our network, we're getting more asset utilization, we are creating less empty miles, we are creating less standing times, and all this will help us to contribute to our sustainability goals. Second one is maximize intermodal. So comparing intermodal on average to comparing intermodal to normal transportation or road transportation, we're seeing about a 50% CO2 reduction when using intermodal. And this is why we are basically launching new geographies, we are launching new lanes, new partners, new trains, new ferries on a monthly basis. So we heavily want to increase the share of goods where we are able to transport them intermodally in order to save CO2. Third one, and probably one of the biggest ones contributing to our environmental goals and sustainability goals, is zero-emission vehicles. We talked about the last mile already, where we ordered about 100,000 vehicles from an BEV company, helping us reducing the last mile CO2 footprint. And also in the middle mile, we are actually owning one of the largest electrified fleets, helping us to further reduce the carbon footprint and further decarbonize our supply chain. And this is not only by the vehicles, but also by the vehicle infrastructure. So basically all our FCs will be equipped with charging stations, will be equipped with solar power. And this will also help us, and this is actually an achievement that we had end of 2023. That was recently announced. So all the facilities that Amazon is operating, all the energy that we are using, so for lights, for the conveyor belts, for the laptops, for everything we use in our offices and in our facilities comes from renewable energy sources since the end of 2023. And then going into like net carbon zero fuels. This is, for example, net carbon zero fuels in terms of hydrogen that we are experimenting right now in a partnership with a large trucking company, but also any other innovation that we are trying to bring into our supply chain. And in the end, we absolutely want to build scale and attain the cost feasibility for these green solutions. This is the main aim that we have in our sustainability structure in Amazon. So, and the very last one is just a short overview about Amazon Freight. So, what we are doing, why we are doing it, and where we position ourselves in the market. You saw some key figures about the network size, about how we're coping with the challenges that we are seeing nowadays, but also challenges that we're seeing during the rest of the year. And Amazon Freight was basically founded in the European Union in 2019. We saw the opportunity to leverage infrastructure. We saw the opportunity to leverage technology, also with our in-house partners from AWS. And that's when we tried to build brick by brick the systems that we're using, the forecast modules, the AI modules, the databases that we are using. So why are we doing this? As we saw, we are trying to optimize our routes. We are trying to optimize your routes, if you want. So we are trying to optimize the network performance and enhance the performance that we are getting from our network by having higher utilizations, less empty miles, etc. So the technical solutions that we have will set us above traditional carriers that you're seeing. So Amazon Freight is actually at the intersection of being a traditional carrier by owning own assets, owning own facilities, owning own personnel, and the digital world of being a freight forwarder. So we are trying to leverage all the benefits from these two industries and get to the prime promise that we make. So one of our promises that we have, and this is what basically all the presentation was also about, is unlimited supply. So we are setting ourselves to the challenge of having unlimited supply. So whenever a customer wants to book a load, we accept the load, we will be there and we will pick up, no matter for which cost internally. So even in the most challenging times of the year, you can book a truck on Amazon and we will make sure that we will pick up your load and execute from start to finish. And this will also be supported by account management teams. This will be supported by operations teams that will monitor all your processes end to end and make sure that you have the best customer experience possible in the industry. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope you can use some of the facts how Amazon is managing uncertainty during peak times or uncertainty. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, very exciting stuff. Thank you so much to have you here on the stage. Again, I can just tell you, put your questions to Slido, because it's really appreciated to get in your questions as well, because yeah, I think you have so many things in mind when you have seen it. I have some, because you talked about intermodal. Yeah? And what, from your point of view, is the biggest challenge today in Europe and your key market region of responsibility for intermodal for Amazon?
So in terms of intermodal, there are actually two major challenges that I would see. The one is transit times, because we see sometimes significantly longer transit times in intermodal compared to normal road transportation. Of course, our systems will try to schedule so we are region trains and ferries on time. And the second one that I see is the drayage legs. So we have to really hit a good corridor to be very sustainable with intermodal, because if we have drayage legs on trucks to freight depots that are, for example, longer than the actual train drive, it is a challenge, because this will definitely decrease the CO2 savings that we want to generate with
Very
this.
exciting. And any intention to manage your own trains? Do we have your own trains already, or is it an intention?
I mean, there's always someone planning at Amazon, but this is then out of my responsibility. I'm not sure if this will happen.
Okay. Ja, thank you so much, Tim.
You're
Großen
very
Applaus
welcome.
nochmal für Tim. Vielen Dank.
Vielen lieben Dank. Danke.